My wife chose my richer brother. Years later, I returned as a billionaire. The Gulfstream's engines hadn't even wound down before Harrison handed me the tablet. The screen wasn't lit with the usual stock tickers or acquisition targets. It was a live feed of the Boston Stock Exchange, tracking the free fall of Cole Properties Group. The red lines looked like arterial spray. 6 months. Mr. Cole, Harrison said, his voice flat, professional, maybe less if the bondholders called the senior notes early. I took the Patek Philippe off my wrist and set it on the polished mahogany table. The platinum case felt cold. 7 years ago, I couldn't afford the batteries for a Casio. Now, this watch cost more than a shitty apartment in Somerville where Vivian decided I wasn't enough. Dead? I corrected him, sliding the watch back on. No, Harrison, just dormant. Tell legal to prepare the initial filings. I want Julian's board served before the wake is over. The car, a Maybach, not the beat-up Corolla I used to drive, glided through the gates of the North Shore estate. Nothing had changed. The same wrought iron fence. The same pretentious lion statues flanking the driveway that Dad had imported from Italy to compensate for his lack of actual legacy. The grass was still too green, maintained by illegal immigrants and a trust fund that was apparently running on fumes. Inside, the air smelled of lilies and old money, the kind of smell that masks the scent of rot. Mom saw me first. She was standing by the casket, looking smaller than I remembered, draped in a black veil that did a poor job of hiding the shock on her face. Her hand flew to her chest. Ethan? Her voice cracked. We heard you were dead. It was the second time today someone had confused my absence for death. Just broke. Mom, I said, walking past her without breaking stride. There's a difference. One is a state of mind. The other is a tax bracket. I didn't look at the casket. I didn't come for the old man. I came for the assets. Julian stepped out of the library. He looked like hell. His custom Tom Ford suit was wrinkled. His hair was thinning in a way he was clearly trying to hide with some expensive, useless serum, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked at me like I was a ghost. Then his expression shifted to pure, undiluted panic. What the hell are you doing here? He hissed, grabbing my arm. His grip was weak. Soft. This isn't the time for your little visits. The press is outside. Dad's barely cold. I shrugged his hand off. Relax. Julian, I'm not here to steal the silver. Yet, his gaze dropped to my shoes, then my watch, then back to my face. He was doing the math, trying to reconcile the Ethan he knew with the man standing in front of him. He was failing. Who is that with you? He demanded, nodding toward Harrison, who was lingering by the door like a shadow. My counsel, I said, and my witness. I assume you remember Marcus? Oh, wait. You probably fired him last year when he told you the commercial real estate market was about to tank. Julian's jaw tightened. I don't need a lecture on the market from a guy who used to eat ramen in a studio apartment. This is a family matter. Is it? I glanced past him. That's when I saw her. Vivian. She was standing near the fireplace, looking like a painting of a grieving widow. Black dress, tasteful pearls, a posture of practiced elegance. But her hands were shaking. When our eyes met, the color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. The black umbrella in her hand clattered to the marble floor. The sound echoed in the silent room. Ethan, she whispered. It wasn't a greeting. It was a prayer for a miracle that wasn't coming. Julian moved to put his arm around her waist. A territorial claim. Vivian is with me now, he said, his voice low, trying to reassert control. This is still a family matter. Keep it down. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Family? Julian, the only thing you've ever managed to keep in this family is the debt. I checked the books on the flight over. You're 6 months from insolvency. Maybe 4. If the interest rates keep climbing. Vivian's eyes widened. She looked at Julian, betrayal flashing across her features. 6 months? You told me the merger was stabilizing us. It's none of his business. Viv, Julian snapped. He turned back to me, jabbing a finger into my chest. You stay away from her. You stay away from the business. You show up here for the funeral. Pay your respects. And then you get the hell out of my city. I caught his wrist mid-jab. My grip was firm, unyielding. I leaned in close, lowering my voice so only the three of us could hear. Your city? Julian, I own the servers your company runs on. I own the cloud storage where you back up your confidential memos. I own the venture capital firm that's about to pull your line of credit. This isn't your city anymore. It hasn't been since the moment I landed. I let go of him. He stumbled back, rubbing his wrist, his face purple with rage and humiliation. Vivian found her voice again, though it was thin and reedy. Ethan, you look different. I held her gaze. 7 years. 7 years of eating cheap noodles so I could buy server space. 7 years of sleeping on data center floors. 7 years of building an empire while she was buying handbags. Money does that. Vivian, I said, my tone icy. It changes everything. It certainly changes how long you can pretend to love a man before the repo man shows up. Mom stepped between us, her hands raised. Stop it, both of you. This is your father's funeral. Have some decency. Decency? I asked her, you want to talk about decency? Where was the decency when Julian raided my account 7 years ago? Where was the decency when Vivian walked out with my prototype code in her purse and a smile on her face? We did what we had to do to survive. Julian spat. You were a drain on the family name. You were nothing. I was building. I corrected him. You were just taking. And now, the taker is tapped out. Harrison cleared his throat gently. Mr. Cole, the attorney is here. The will is ready to be reviewed preliminarily before the service. Julian's head snapped toward him. Attorney? What attorney? We're using the family's firm. I am the family's firm now. Julian, I said. I pulled a folded document from my inner pocket. It was thick, heavy vellum. I tossed it onto the antique sideboard. Julian flinched as if I'd thrown a brick. That a preliminary offer for Cole Properties Group. It's a generous offer. Considering the liabilities, you sign it today. You keep the house. You refuse, and I start liquidating your assets piece by piece until there's nothing left but the debt you inherited from Dad. You can't do that, Julian whispered, but his eyes were already scanning the document, looking for loopholes and finding none. I can, I said, and I will, because unlike you, I understand the value of leverage. Vivian took a step toward me, her hand reaching out as if to touch my sleeve. Ethan, please, can we talk? Alone? I looked at her hand. It was still trembling. I remembered those hands. They used to shake when she was excited about a new idea. Now they shook because her world was collapsing. There's nothing to talk about. Vivian, I said, you made your choice. You chose the gold-plated cage over the blueprints. Now you get to live in it while the roof caves in. Is this about revenge? She asked, tears welling up. No, I said, turning toward the door. Revenge is a dish best served hot. This isn't revenge. This is a hostile takeover. There's a difference. Revenge is personal. Business is just math. I walked out, leaving them in the parlor with the scent of lilies and failure. Harrison fell into step behind me. Sir, the press is asking for a statement regarding your return. Tell them I'm here for the funeral. I said, stepping back into the gray Boston afternoon. But I'm staying for the probate. I slid into the back of the Maybach. As the driver pulled away, I saw Vivian run out onto the porch. She was crying openly now, her perfect makeup running. She looked small, abandoned. I pulled out my phone and dialed a secure line. Initiate phase 1. I said, watching her in the tinted window as we drove away. Let's remind my brother who really owns this town. I hung up. The car was silent except for the soft hum of the engine. I looked at the ring on my finger. Platinum. Simple. Bought with my first billion. It felt heavier than the past, but it felt right. The wake was a circus. People I hadn't seen in a decade came up to me, offering condolences that sounded like job applications. So sorry for your loss. Mr. Cole, heard about the IPO. Would love to pick your brain. I ignored them. I stood in the corner of the reception room, nursing a glass of water. I don't drink during negotiations, and watched Julian work the room. He was a caricature of a grieving son, shaking hands, accepting sympathy, all while his eyes darted toward me every 30 seconds like a trapped animal looking for the exit. Vivian stayed by the food, picking at a plate of crackers. She didn't talk to anyone. She just stared at the floor. Mom cornered me near the bar. She composed herself, putting the mask of the society matriarch back on, but her eyes were red. "Why are you doing this now?" she asked, her voice low. "Couldn't you have waited until after we buried your father? He's been buried for years." "Mom," I said, "in debt, in lies, and in the shadow of Julian's failures. I'm just making it official. You're going to destroy him. I'm going to save what's left of this family's name before he drags it into the gutter." I countered. "Or did you forget that the charitable foundation you love so much is funded by the same real estate ventures that are currently circling the drain?" She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She knew. Of course, she knew. She just didn't want to admit that the son she'd written off was the only one capable of stopping the bleeding. Julian approached us, his face slick with sweat despite the chill in the room. "We need to talk." "Outside." I nodded to Mom. "Excuse us." We stepped out onto the terrace. The air was damp, the sky threatening rain. Julian didn't waste time. "That offer," he started, his voice shaking. "It's a joke. You're valuing the company at 10 cents on the dollar. It's a fair valuation for a company with negative equity and a CEO who doesn't understand accrual accounting," I said, leaning against the stone railing. "Take it, Julian. Take it and walk away with a fraction of your pride. Or don't, and lose everything, including the house you're so desperate to keep. This is about Vivian, isn't it?" he accused. "You're doing this because she left you. You're a sad, pathetic loser who got lucky with a tech bubble, and now you're trying to play God." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression. "Look, Julian, I wrote the algorithms that power half the data centers in this country. Luck is finding a 20 in your old coat. What I did was calculus. And as for Vivian, she made her bed. I'm just enjoying the fact that it's lumpy as hell. She's my wife." He growled. "For now," I said, "but we both know that marriage is a transaction. And right now, the currency is worthless." He lunged at me. It wasn't a punch. It was a desperate grab, like a drowning man clutching at a life raft. I sidestepped him easily. He stumbled, catching himself on a wrought iron chair. "You always were soft." I murmured. "Dad knew it. I know it. The only reason you lasted this long is because people felt sorry for you." Julian looked up at me, his face twisted in rage and despair. "I'll fight you. I'll sue you. I'll tell everyone what you're doing." "Go ahead," I said. "Tell them. Tell them how you stole my intellectual property to build your company. Tell them how you've been cooking the books to hide the losses. I have the audit trails. Julian, every email, every transaction, every lie, you try to fight me. And I won't just take the company. I'll make sure you never work in this town again. I'll make sure Vivian has to explain to her high society friends why her husband is serving coffee at a diner in Southie." I straightened up. A drop of rain hit my cheek. "The offer expires when the graveside service ends." I said, "Sign it, and I'll let you keep the cars. Refuse, and I'll repossess the air you're breathing." I walked back inside, leaving him on the terrace. Vivian was standing in the hallway, having witnessed the entire exchange. Tears were streaming down her face, but she didn't make a sound. Our eyes met one last time before I headed back to crowd. "Goodbye, Vivian," I said quietly. She didn't reply. She just watched me go, her shoulders slumping as the reality of her choices settled over her like a shroud. I returned to the Maybach. The driver asked if I want to go to the cemetery. "Not yet," I said. "Give me an hour. I want to watch the markets open." I opened my laptop. Cole Properties Group was down another 2% in pre-market trading. The news wires were already buzzing about the mysterious return of the coal air and the sudden volatility of the family business. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The rain started to fall harder, drumming against the roof of the car. It sounded exactly like the night she left. But this time, I wasn't the one standing in the storm. I was the one holding the umbrella. The graveside service was mercifully short. The priest rushed through the rites, eager to escape the downpour. Julian stood there, soaked, holding the unsigned acquisition papers in a trembling hand. Mom was weeping silently under a black umbrella held by a stone-faced assistant. Vivian stood slightly apart, her hair plastered to her forehead. She looked at me once, a look of such profound regret that it almost made me feel something. Almost, as the casket was lowered into the ground. I turned away. I didn't stay for the dirt throwing. I didn't stay for goodbyes. I had a meeting with the board of Cole Properties in an hour. I had a company to dismantle and a legacy to rebuild in my own image. As I drove away, I saw Julian finally look at the papers in his hand. He looked up, his eyes wild, searching for me in the sea of black umbrellas. But I was already gone. The city was mine. The game had just begun. And for the first time in 7 years, the rain felt warm. I didn't go to the office. Offices are for people who need validation. I went to club, not the one Julian frequents on Boylston Street, the one with the velvet ropes and the overpriced scotch where he plays at being a titan. I went to the one in Kendall Square, the one with the concrete floors and the security guards who don't ask questions, only check IDs against the digital ledger I own. Marcus was already there, tucked into a corner booth. He looked like he'd aged a decade in the 7 years since I'd last seen him. Back then, he was a kid with a caffeine addiction and a Seville row habit he couldn't afford. Now, his suit was off the rack, his hair was thinning, and there was a permanent crease between his eyebrows that spoke of migraines and margin calls. I slid into the seat opposite him. He didn't stand. He didn't offer a handshake. He just stared at the glass of water in front of him, like it held the secrets of the universe. "Cole," he said. His voice was raspy. "Jesus Christ. You're actually back." "Marcus." I acknowledged. I placed a manila folder on the table. It landed with a soft thud. "You look like you haven't slept since 2017. I haven't slept since you left." He muttered. He finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, the whites tinged yellow. "Julian's got me on a 90-hour week. He thinks if he screams loud enough, the servers will stop crashing." I signal for coffee. "Black, no sugar. They are crashing, aren't they?" Marcus leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's worse than you think. Project Nightingale, the core architecture. It's a house of cards. You build it to scale, but you built it on a foundation of assumptions. We patched it. Ethan, we patched it so many times with third-party APIs and duct tape that it's basically a security risk waiting to happen. The load times alone are costing us $3 million a month in lost leases. 7 years. Marcus," I said, stirring the coffee I didn't drink. "I gave you that code. I trusted you to keep it clean. Instead, you let him turn it into a ticking time bomb." He flinched. "He threatened my kids' tuition. Man, he found out about Sarah's lupus. He told me if I didn't optimize the back end for his vision, he'd drop our insurance. And Vivian," he trailed off, swallowing hard. "Vivian showed us the bank statements. She showed us what you had in your account versus what Julian was offering. We were all just employees. Ethan, we weren't profits. Struggling is not losing." "Marcus," I said, my voice cold. "I was building. There's a difference. You didn't struggle. You capitulated. You sold the future for a monthly premium." He ran a hand over his face. "So what now? You fly in, flash your watch, and gloat? Because if that's it, I'm not interested. I'm too tired to hate you properly. I don't need your hate." I said. I pushed the folder across the table. "I need your access. I need the server logs. The offshore accounts Julian's been using to hide the depreciation on the Southie docks. And I need the master keys to the Nightingale source repository." Marcus stared at the folder like it was a snake. "If I give you that, I'm finished. He'll sue me into oblivion. He'll make sure I never work in tech again." I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. "If you don't give me that, Julian's going to prison. And when the feds raid the offices, They're going to find your signature on every single patch note, every single security waiver. They're going to assume you were the architect of the fraud. I'll buy your debt before the first subpoena hits. Marcus, I'll make sure your kid gets the best care on the planet. But only if you do exactly what I say. Starting now. He was quiet for a long time. The club was silent except for the hum of the HVAC system. Finally, he reached for the folder, his hand trembling. What do you want first? He asked. The audit trails for the last 18 months. Specifically, the ones related to the Miami expansion. I want to see where the money from the 2022 bond issuance really went. Marcus nodded, pulling out a burner phone. His fingers moved over the screen with a speed that belied his exhaustion. Within minutes, encrypted files began pinging my secure server. He's been skimming, Marcus whispered, confirming my suspicions. About 12% off the top, laundered through a construction firm in Fort Lauderdale. Vivian's cousin runs it. She knows. Ethan, she's not just a victim here. She's a beneficiary. I felt a hollow click in my chest. I'd known it. Logically, I'd known she wasn't just a passive player in Julian's world. But hearing it confirmed, seeing the data trail her perfume through the Cayman Islands, still felt like a fresh cut. Keep digging, I said, standing up. I want every transaction. I want the names of the judges he's bribed and the inspectors he's paid off. By the end of the week, I want a roadmap of his entire criminal enterprise on my desk. Marcus looked up at me. A flicker of the old fire, the one that used to love solving impossible problems, lighting up in his eyes. You're going to burn it all down. I'm going to salt the earth. I corrected him. Leave the burner on the table. Use the cash in the envelope. Don't go home tonight. Go to the address in the folder. You'll be safe there until I call. I walked out, leaving him with the ghost of the code we used to share. Outside, the air was thick with humidity. I got into the car, and Harrison handed me a tablet. Mrs. Cole is requesting a meeting. He said, she's at the Four Seasons. She says it's urgent. She can wait. I said, scrolling through the data Marcus had sent. The numbers were beautiful in their depravity. Julian hadn't just failed. He'd accelerated his failure with a reckless disregard for the law that was almost artistic. My phone buzzed. A blocked number. I answered. Ethan. It was Vivian. Her voice was low, strained, like she was calling from a closet. I know you're back, she said. I need to see you. You saw me at the funeral. I said, my tone flat. Was the grave not atmospheric enough for you? This isn't a game, she hissed. Julian is losing his mind. He's talking about moving assets offshore. He's talking about what? Vivian? Burning the evidence? He doesn't have the spine. He's a looter, not an arsonist. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast. I'm scared. Ethan, you should be. I said, you made a career out of being scared. Scared of poverty. Scared of irrelevance. Scared of me. How's that fear treating you now that the money's drying up? I didn't know it would be like this. She whispered. I thought he would provide. I thought he was stable. You thought he was rich. I corrected. And now he's not. And you're stuck in the middle of a correction you don't understand. Please, she said. The words sounded foreign on her lips. She'd never pleaded with me before. Not when she left. Not when she took the code. Can we meet? Just for 5 minutes. I'm at the public garden. Near the bridge. I looked at the tablet. The sun was starting to set over the Charles. I had a board call in an hour. I had 100 better things to do than listen to the regrets of a woman who'd chosen gold over gravity. 5 minutes. I said, don't be late. And Vivian, come alone. If Julian's with you, I'll have the car turn around before you see my face. I hung up before she could respond. I gave Harrison the address. He didn't ask questions. He just drove. The public garden was quiet. Tourists were thinning out, heading back to their hotels. Vivian was sitting on a bench near the lagoon, wearing a trench coat that was too thin for the evening chill. She looked up as the car pulled to the curb. I didn't get out. I rolled down the window. She walked over, her heels clicking on the pavement. She looked older in the fading light. The Botox couldn't hide the tension in her jaw, the desperation in her eyes. Get in, I said. She slid into the back seat. The scent of her perfume, still the same one. Chanel No. 5. A classic choice for a woman who wanted to be seen as timeless, filling the enclosed space. Thank you, she said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Don't thank me. I said, talk. You have 4 minutes left. She took a shaky breath. Julian's going to crash the company. He's going to take the insurance policies out on the properties, and then, I don't know. He's talking about disappearing. He said if he's going down, he's taking everyone with him. Sounds like a man who's realized the ceiling is made of glass. I said, and it's cracking. He's dangerous. Ethan, he's always been dangerous. But now he's desperate. He mentioned the code. He said if you try to take the company, he'll release the audit showing that you were the one who built the faulty infrastructure. He'll say you sabotaged it before you left. I laughed, a short, sharp bark of amusement. He's going to blame the architect for the owner's shoddy renovations? That's his play? He's dumber than I thought. It's not funny. She snapped. He'll ruin you. He'll tell the world that you're the reason Cole Properties is failing. I am the reason it's failing. I said, turning to look at her. I'm the reason it ever succeeded. And I'm the reason it's about to cease existing. There's a difference between a legacy and a liability. Vivian, Julian is a liability. You are a liability. Her eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake. I see that now. I thought I wanted the life he offered, the security, the parties, the everything. But it's empty, Ethan. It's all so empty. And I'm so tired of being a trophy in a house that's falling apart. A mistake is buying the wrong tie. I said, my voice dropping to a lethal calm. What you did was a business decision. You evaluated the assets. You assessed the risk. And you sold your soul to the highest bidder. In business, Vivian, when you sell your soul, you don't get a refund just because the market crashed. I still think about you, she whispered, reaching out a hand to touch my arm. Every day, I wonder what it would have been like if I'd stayed, if I believed in you. I looked at her hand. I remembered those fingers tracing the lines of my face when we were young, when the only thing we had was a belief that we could build something real. Now, those fingers were adorned with diamonds that felt like shackles. Don't, I said, pulling my arm away. Don't think about me. Think about the interest rates on Julian's loans instead. They're compounding much faster than your regret. Think about the fact that the man you married is about to be indicted for fraud. And the only thing keeping you in that house is my willingness to not press charges for the theft of my intellectual property. Yet, she recoiled as if I'd slapped her. You wouldn't. I wouldn't what? Prosecute you? Vivian, I've spent 7 years learning how to be ruthless. I've learned that mercy is a currency best spent on the deserving. You spent your mercy on a penthouse view and a closet full of clothes that don't fit your soul. I tapped the partition. Harrison started to pull away from the curb. Wait, she cried. Ethan, please, is there anything I can do? Anything to make this right? I looked at her one last time. Her makeup was streaked. Her hair was windblown, and she looked like a woman who'd finally realized the price of her choices. No, I said, there isn't. You made your bed in silk sheets. Vivian, now you get to lie in it while the creditors come knocking. The car accelerated. I didn't look back. I watched her in the side mirror, growing smaller and smaller until she was just a dark spot on the edge of a garden that was slowly losing its light. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. I got the files on the Miami construction firm. He texted, "It's worse than we thought. There's a paper trail leading directly to Vivian's personal Amex. She's been laundering money through her charity events." I closed the message. Perfect. The game wasn't just about taking the company anymore. It was about taking everything. And Vivian had just given me the rope to hang them both. I leaned back against the leather seat and closed my eyes. The city lights blurred past the window. Somewhere out there, Julian was frantically moving money between accounts like a rat in a maze. And Vivian was sitting on a bench, realizing that the throne she'd fought for was actually a prison cell. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just the cold, clear focus of a man who'd finally cornered his prey. The hunt was over. The reckoning had begun. The headline on Bloomberg hit at 9:41 a.m. Coal Properties Group plummets 22% on fraud allegations. Insiders dump shares. I was in the shower when Harrison called. I didn't need to look at the screen. The acoustics of the marble bathroom carried his voice perfectly. Sir, the banks are freezing the credit lines. Julian's team is calling every 5 minutes. The SEC has issued a formal inquiry. I turned off the water and grabbed a towel. Let them inquire. Tell legal to forward the Miami files to the SEC. All of them. Include the photos of the construction site, the ones with Vivian's signature on the inspection waivers. They'll charge her as an accessory. Mr. Cole, she's not just a bystander in this. I'm aware of her proximity to the crime. Harrison, I wiped the steam off the mirror. My reflection looked exactly like a man who hadn't slept in order to make sure others couldn't. That's the point. Make sure the U.S. attorney gets a copy before lunch. I want Julian's bail hearing to be a national embarrassment. By noon, the phones were melting down. I spent the morning in a conference call with my MA team, finalizing the acquisition of the Port of Boston logistics contracts, Julian's last stable revenue stream. He'd leveraged it to the hilt, but my cash reserves didn't care about his leverage. They cared about ownership. At 2 p.m., Mom's number flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer it. Almost. Ethan, she breathed. She sounded like she'd been crying for hours. Have you seen the news? They're saying Julian is a criminal. They're saying the family name is toxic. The family name became toxic when Julian started treating escrow accounts like his personal slush fund. I said, pouring a glass of San Pellegrino. What did you expect? Mother? A ticker tape parade? I expected you to show some restraint. He's your brother. Your father is barely in the ground. Dad died because of stress. Mom, stress caused by covering Julian's ass for 20 years. I'm not here to shame the family. I'm here to liquidate the liability before it takes the rest of us down with it. Did you really think he'd changed? That the money he spent on your charities was clean? She was silent. In the background, I could hear the television blaring. A reporter was standing outside the Coal Properties headquarters, describing the carnage inside. Where is he? I asked. At the house. He's drunk. He's screaming about the kid. About you? He says you set him up. Her voice broke. He says you always hated him. I didn't hate him. I said, hate requires passion. I just watch him fail. Repeatedly. And now I'm cleaning it up. If you destroy him, you destroy me. She whispered. The trust. The house. It's all tied to his performance. If he goes to jail, I lose everything. I paused. That was the crux of it. She wasn't worried about Julian. She was worried about her lifestyle. The same lifestyle that had blinded her to his crimes for years. The trust is compromised. I said, I've moved the liquid assets into a blind trust managed by my firm. You'll have an allowance. Enough to live comfortably, but not enough to fund Julian's legal defense. If you want to keep the house, you'll sign the deed over to me by Friday. If you don't, I'll sell it to pay off the liens he's hidden in the basement filing cabinets. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a realist. I corrected. You raise a monster. Mom, you just didn't notice because he was signing the checks. Sign the papers. Or start looking for a condo in Quincy. I hung up. The silence in the suite was heavy. I looked at the city below. Somewhere in that grid of steel and glass, Julian was drinking himself into a stupor, and Vivian was realizing that her credit cards were about to stop working. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification from the security app. Vivian had tried to use her Amex at Neiman Marcus. Declined. She'd tried her debit card. Frozen. I'd instructed the banks to lock her accounts the moment the SEC investigation went public. Julian's credit was toast. Hers was just collateral. An hour later, Harrison informed me that Vivian was in the lobby. She didn't have an appointment. She looked like she hadn't slept since our meeting in the garden. Send her up, I said, and hold all calls. She walked in like a ghost. The tailored trench coat she wore looked cheap in the harsh light of my office. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were swollen. She didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at the floor. Your card stopped working? I asked, not looking up from my monitor. I can't pay the utilities, she said, her voice hoarse. The electricity at the house was shut off this morning. Julian is... He's incoherent. He's screaming about the kid and the code. Did you think the money was infinite? I asked, did you think it grew on the trees in the backyard? That was my code. Vivian, my algorithms. Every dollar Julian spent was a dollar he stole from me. And now, the meter is running out. I didn't know it was that bad. She whispered. He told me the company was fine. He told me you were just a disgruntled employee trying to cause trouble. I finally looked at her. He lied to you. Vivian, he's been lying to you for 7 years. The only difference is, you believe him because the lies came with a Birkin bag. She sank into the chair opposite my desk. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? My father's company. You bought it. My brother's. You fired them. I have nowhere. You have a husband. I said, technically, though I imagine he's about to be very busy in a federal penitentiary. Tears started streaming down her face. Ethan, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. I'll leave him. I'll testify against him. Just give me a way out. Give me a chance to start over. I leaned back in my chair. Start over? You want to start over? You're 42 years old. Vivian, you haven't worked a day in your life that wasn't funded by stolen money. You don't know how to start over. You know how to spend. You know how to pose. You know how to choose the winner. And you chose wrong. I was scared. She shouted, slamming her hands on the desk. I was scared of being poor. I was scared of living in that cramped apartment with a man who talked about potential while we ate ramen. I wanted a life. I wanted security. And now you have it. I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You have the security of knowing exactly where your next meal is coming from. It's coming from me, because I own you now. I own your debt. I own your history. And I own the evidence that could put you in a cell next to Julian. She stared at me, her chest heaving. You want me to suffer. I want you to watch. I said, I want you to see what real power looks like. I want you to sit in that dark house with no electricity and realize that the man you married is a fraud. And the man you left is the only reason you're not currently in a holding cell downtown. Then I want you to spend the rest of your life wondering what it felt like to have it beside you. I hate you, she whispered. No, you don't. I said, you hate that I'm right. You hate that you traded a future for a present that's already rotting. Hatred is easy. Regret is the ulcer that never heals. She stood up, swaying slightly. What happens now? Now you go back to the house. You pack a bag for Julian. You tell him his brother says hello. And you wait. You wait for the FBI to knock on the door. And when they do, you remember that I offered you a choice 7 years ago. And you chose the gold watch over the clock tower. Time always catches up. She turned and walked out without another word. I watched the elevator doors close behind her. Harrison appeared in the doorway a moment later. Sir, the charity gala is tonight. Mrs. Cole has requested your presence as a keynote speaker. It's the only event she has left that hasn't been canceled. Cancel her request. I said, but buy a table. I'll attend as a benefactor. I want Julian to see me there. I want him to see that the world he's losing is the one I'm about to own. Very good, sir. And Mrs. Cole, the one currently leaving, follow her. I said, I want to know if she talks to Julian. I want to know if she tries to run. If she does, intercept her. Bring her back here. She's not allowed to leave the city until I say so. Harrison nodded. Consider it done. I turned back to the monitors. The stock ticker for Cole Properties was frozen. Trading halted. It was over for Julian. But for Vivian, the real punishment was just beginning. She spent 7 years living in a dream. Tonight, I was going to make sure she woke up. The subpoena arrived at Julian's doorstep at 6:03 a.m. I know because I was watching security feed. He answered in a bathrobe that probably cost $3,000. His hair a bird's nest. His eyes wild. The U.S. Marshall didn't care about the thread count. He just held out the paper. Julian's hand shook so bad he could barely take it. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. A blocked number. I answered, setting my coffee down. Did you see that? Julian screamed into the phone. Spittle was audible. Did you see what you made me? A fucking target. The FBI is in my driveway. I saw the feed. I said calmly, you should have signed the papers at the wake. Julian, this is what happens when you confuse leverage with luck. They're saying I embezzled. They're saying I defrauded the pension funds. I didn't. He stopped. A lie caught in his throat. He had. We both knew it. You didn't what? I prompted. You didn't think I'd trace the Miami wire transfers? You didn't think Marcus would talk? Or maybe you didn't think Vivian's little shopping habits would flag a Fincian alert. You're not a criminal mastermind. Julian, you're a spoiled brat with a calculator. And now the calculator is showing your balance due. I'll drag you down with me. He shrieked. I'll tell them about the code. I'll tell them you built the back doors. I'll tell them you left traps in Nightingale to blow the whole thing up. I laughed. It was a cold, metallic sound. Go ahead. Tell them. I'll countersue for theft of trade secrets and watch you try to explain why your proprietary code has my original variable names from 2016. The only trap I left was the one you built yourself by being too incompetent to maintain what you stole. He went silent. On the screen, I watched him sink onto the steps of his mansion. The subpoena crumpled in his fist. Mom's having a stroke. He whispered suddenly. She collapsed when the agents showed up. They took her to Mass General. I felt a flicker, not of sadness, but of annoyance. The timeline was accelerating too fast. Keep her stable. I said, I'll handle the hospital. You stay put. If you run, I'll make sure Vivian is in the cell next to yours before sunset. I hung up. Harrison was already by the door, holding my coat. Mass General. I said, call ahead, clear the VIP floor, and give me the name of the lead cardiologist on call. The hospital was chaos. Reporters camped outside like vultures. I bypassed them all through a private entrance. Mom was in the ICU, hooked to machines. She looked like a shell. Julian was there, looking smaller than ever, his arrogance replaced by a hollow terror. He didn't scream this time. He just looked at me with dead eyes. She kept saying your name. He croaked, over and over. Ethan, fix it, even when she was seizing. I walked past him to the glass. Mom's chest rose and fell with mechanical assistance. She always thought you were the golden child. I said quietly, even when you were burning through her inheritance. She defended you, said you had potential. Turns out, her potential was a liability with a heartbeat. Don't talk about her like that. Julian hissed. She's your mother. She was your enabler. I corrected, and now she's a witness. If she wakes up, she'll be deposed. She'll have to testify about the trust funds you drained, about the checks she signed to cover your losses. Is that what you want? For her to die on a witness stand? Julian leaned against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the linoleum. I can't go to jail. Ethan, I can't. I'll die in there. Then you should have thought about that before you cooked the books. I said, before you used Vivian as a mule, before you pissed away a legacy that took 3 generations to build. He started to cry. Real tears, not the performative ones he used at funerals. These were the tears of a man who'd finally hit the bedrock of his own failure. Help me, he choked out. Please, I'm your brother. I looked down at him, this pathetic, broken thing that shared my DNA. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a vast, empty indifference. You lost the right to ask for help when you chose to rob me. I said, the only help I'm offering is a cell with a view. Sign the remaining assets over to the firm by noon, and I'll make sure your detention is in a federal facility in New Hampshire, not Suffolk County. Refuse. And I'll make sure Vivian's indictment is unsealed before the evening news. Choose. He looked up at me, his face slick with tears and snot. He didn't move. He just stared. I turned to leave. Wait, a voice said. It wasn't Julian. It was Vivian. She was standing in the hallway shadows, wrapped in a cheap cardigan. She must have come in through the staff entrance. She looked exhausted, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. "Don't sign it. Julian," she said, her voice steady for the first time in days. She walked into the light, her eyes fixed on me. "Don't give him the satisfaction." Julian looked at her like she was a hallucination. "Vivian, what are you doing here? Your cards are frozen," she finished. "I know. I've been walking. I went to the house. It's empty. Julian, the furniture is getting repossessed. There's a notice on the door. We have 3 days to vacate." Julian sobbed, burying his face in his hands. Vivian ignored him. She walked right up to me, stopping inches from my face. "You did this. You orchestrated every second of this. The SEC, the FBI, the hospital. It's all you. Observation is not a crime." "Vivian," I said, "unlike wire fraud and conspiracy to commit mail fraud, which are currently being listed on a warrant with your maiden name on it." She didn't flinch. "I have something you want." I raised an eyebrow. "You have nothing I want. I own your past, your present, and your foreseeable future. I have the ledgers," she whispered, "the real ones, the ones Julian kept in the safe behind Picasso, the ones that show every bribe, every kickback, every dollar he funneled through the charity, the ones that prove I wasn't just a passenger. I was the navigator." I studied her face. She was serious. She was holding the smoking gun, and she was offering it to me. "What's the price?" I asked. "2 things," she said. "1, you leave Julian's mother's trust alone. The one for the nurses and the hospice care. Leave it untouched. No administrative fees. No liquidation. Impossible." I said, "It's part of the asset pool." 2, she continued, her voice hardening. "You don't prosecute me. Not civilly. Not criminally. I walk away clean. No record. No ankle bracelet. I get a ticket to anywhere that isn't here, and I disappear." I laughed softly. "You think you're in a position to bargain? You're offering me evidence I already have. Marcus gave me the server backups 3 days ago. I know about the safe. I know about the ledgers. I just haven't bothered to pick them up yet, because I was enjoying watching you both squirm." Her confidence faltered. You knew?" "I know everything." "Vivian," I said, "I know about the safe deposit box in Zurich. I know about the diamonds you sewed into your coat lining. I know you've been planning your exit since the day the SEC started sniffing around. You're not a martyr. You're a rat looking for a lifeboat." She paled. "Then why haven't you arrested me?" "Because I wanted you to come to me." I said, "I wanted you to see that your only value left was as a witness against the man you chose over me. And now you're here, begging for scraps." Julian looked up, his face contorted. "You have the ledgers? You had the proof this whole time? You were going to leave me? I was trying to survive." Vivian shouted at him. "Something you wouldn't understand, because you've never had to. You thought the money would last forever. You thought Ethan would never come back. And now look at us. Look at what your arrogance did." "Shut up," Julian roared, struggling to his feet. He lunged at her, but I stepped between them. I didn't hit him. I just grabbed his wrist and twisted, forcing him back against the wall. "Touch her, and I'll have you in a holding cell before you can blink," I said, my voice low. "She's mine. Julian, she's my property now. My leverage. My evidence. Mine to dispose of as I see fit." I released him. He slumped, defeated. I turned back to Vivian. "The deal is off. You don't get to negotiate. You want to give me the ledgers? Fine, give them to me. But you'll do it on my terms. You'll testify. You'll wear a wire if I tell you to. And when it's over, you'll live whatever life I allow you to live. You want to walk away clean? You should have stayed in that tiny apartment 7 years ago." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You're a devil. I'm a creditor," I said, "and your debt is due." I nodded to Harrison. 2 security men appeared, flanking Vivian. "Take her to the car." I ordered. "Go to the house. Get the ledgers. If Julian's men give you trouble, call the marshals. They're already on site." Vivian didn't resist. She just looked at Julian one last time, a look of pure, undiluted contempt. I hope it was worth it. She whispered, then she was gone. Julian slid back down to the floor, his head in his hands. She's gone. He kept repeating. She's gone. It's all gone. I looked at him, at the brother who had stolen my life and ruined it, at the man who was about to lose everything. The ledgers will seal your fate. I said, but they won't change the outcome. You were always going to end up here. Julian, you just needed me to show you the way. I walked out of the ICU. The sounds of his weeping faded behind the heavy doors. In the car, Harrison handed me a sealed envelope. Inside were the photographs from the safe deposit box. Vivian hadn't just kept the ledgers. She'd kept the diamonds. And a letter addressed to me. I didn't open it. I just slid it into my briefcase. The game was over. The audit was complete. And the only thing left was the sentencing. The reading happened at Ropes Gray, not because I wanted the prestige, but because the firm had represented the family since 1922, and I needed them to witness the extinction of their longest client. Julian sat between two public defenders, his suit borrowed, his wrists raw where the cuffs had bitten into him earlier that morning. He'd posted bail, but the conditions were strict. No contact with Vivian, no access to financial instruments, and a GPS anklet that looked garish against his Italian loafers. Mom was in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse. She hadn't spoken since the stroke, but her eyes tracked everything with a cold, furious intelligence. She knew what was coming. She'd known for weeks. Vivian sat apart, in a chair near the window. She'd worn a gray dress that looked like it came from a consignment store. She didn't look at Julian. She didn't look at Mom. She looked at me, always at me. Arthur Pembroke, the senior partner, cleared his throat. He looked like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. We are gathered here to execute the last will and testament of Robert Thayer Cole. To my son, Julian Cole, I leave the sum of $1. This is not a mathematical error, but a deliberate act. To my wife, Evelyn, I leave the care of our grandchildren, should any exist, and the contents of the safe deposit box numbered 447B, located at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. To my daughter-in-law, Vivian Cole, I leave a letter. To my son, Ethan Cole, I leave the residue of my estate, along with the responsibility of executing this will and managing the Cole family trust. Julian shot out of his chair. $1? Are you insane? This is a joke. Ethan, you did this. You poisoned him against me. Sit down. Mr. Cole, one of the public defenders muttered, yanking him back into his seat. You're under supervision. I didn't look at Julian. I looked at Arthur. The residue includes a controlling shares of Cole properties. Correct? Correct. Mr. Cole. However, the shares are encumbered by significant debt. The IRS has filed liens totaling $47 million. The company is effectively insolvent. Then I'll dissolve it. I said, file the Chapter 7 immediately, liquidate the assets, and distribute the proceeds to the creditors, except for the pension fund. I'll cover the pension shortfall personally. I want the workers to get their checks. Arthur nodded, making a note. And the trust. Sir, your father's instructions were specific. He wanted the principal converted into a foundation. I said, reciting the terms I'd memorized. Funding STEM scholarships for inner-city Boston kids. No Cole name on the buildings, just the grants. And the board is to be appointed by me, with a majority of members having no prior association with the family. Julian started laughing. It was a high-pitched, wheezing sound. A foundation? You're turning the family legacy into a tax write-off? Dad would be spinning in his grave. Dad is in the ground because he spent 30 years bailing you out. I said, finally turning to look at him. This isn't a legacy. It's a cleanup operation. The foundation is the only part of you worth saving. And it's not even yours anymore. I nodded to Arthur. He handed a sealed envelope to Vivian. She took it with trembling hands, her eyes never leaving mine. She tore it open carefully, pulling out a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored paper. She read it once, then again. Her face went white. What does it say? Julian hissed. She didn't answer. She just kept staring at the paper. Tears welled up, but they didn't fall. They just sat there, suspended in her lower lashes. Arthur cleared his throat again. The letter is private. Mr. Cole, but I can confirm its contents pertain to a specific item left to Mrs. Cole by your father. I stood up. The meeting was over. I walked over to Vivian. She looked up at me. The letter crumpled in her fist. He knew. She whispered. He knew everything. About the code. About the money. About Miami. He knew I was the one who finalized the theft. I finished for her. Yes, he did. He knew you were the architect of his downfall. Vivian, that's why he left you the ring. She looked down at her lap. In her other hand, she was holding a small, velvet box. She opened it. Inside was a ring. The original engagement ring. The one I designed out of titanium and a single, flawed sapphire because we couldn't afford a diamond. The one she'd pawned the week she left me to buy the first round of drinks on Julian's yacht. He left me this? She asked, her voice breaking. Why? To mock me? To weigh you down? I said, read the last line. Vivian. She looked back at the letter. She read aloud, her voice barely audible. You chose gold over love. Here is the gold's echo. May it remind you of the weight of your choice. She closed the box with a snap. Her hands were shaking so badly the box rattled. I can't wear this. I can't. You don't have to wear it. I said, you just have to carry it for the rest of your life. It's your anchor now, the price of your freedom. Julian struggled against his public defender. Give me the ring. That's family property. That's mine. I looked at him. It was never yours. Julian, it was never even mine. It was a symbol of a future that Vivian burned for a weekend in Miami. Keep it, Vivian. Let it remind you that the gold you crave turned to ash in your hands. I turned to Arthur. Finalize the dissolution. Notify the U.S. attorney that I'm waiving any claims against Mrs. Cole in exchange for her testimony against Julian. Make sure the plea deal is airtight. She walks away with the ring and a bus ticket. Nothing else. Vivian stood up. The ring box clutched to her chest. Ethan, is this it? Is this all I get? A lifetime of carrying this. This ghost? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had shattered me, who had helped build the empire that had tried to crush me. She looked small, defeated, human. No, I said, you get more than that. You get the one thing you never had with Julian. You get clarity. You get to wake up every morning and know exactly why your life is the way it is. You get to live with the consequences of your choice, without the distraction of platinum card or a penthouse view. That's the real punishment. Vivian, not jail, not poverty. The absolute, unshakable knowledge that you did this to yourself. I walked toward the door. Mom's nurse wheeled her past me. Mom's eyes met mine. She gave the slightest, most reluctant nod of her head, an acknowledgement, a surrender. I paused at the threshold. Julian was sobbing now, his head on the table. Vivian was staring at the ring like it was a scorpion. Harrison, I said quietly into my earpiece, take Mrs. Cole to South Station. Put her on the first train to anywhere, and make sure she doesn't have a return ticket. I walked out into the Boston afternoon. The air was crisp, the sky clear, indifferent blue. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't look back at the wreckage. I got into the car. Harrison handed me a folder containing the final transfer papers for the foundation. I signed them with a Mont Blanc pen. The ink was black. Definitive. Where to? Mr. Cole? Harrison asked. Logan. I said, I have a flight to Palo Alto. There's a board meeting in 4 hours. As the car pulled into traffic, I looked at the city one last time in the side mirror. Cole Properties was a name on a building, soon to be a memory. Julian was a footnote in a federal indictment. Vivian was a woman on a train, carrying a ring that weighed more than her regrets. I opened my palm. The titanium band I wore on my right hand caught the sunlight. It was a replica of the one I'd given her, but stronger, unbreakable. I'd come back for revenge. I'd gotten justice. I'd lost a family, but I'd built an empire that didn't need them. The car accelerated toward the airport. The past was behind me, shrinking in the mirror. The future was a straight, open road, and for the first time in 7 years, it was completely silent.